Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck. I'm an international speaker and parenting and relationship expert, and I know a lot about adolescence. I've had 4 children of my own and have raised 3 of them so that they've left my home, and we've got 1 left, and he's almost there. He's in adolescence right now. I also was a previous foster parent for troubled teens, all between the ages of 12 and 18. And what people often want to know from me is, when does adolescence end and adulthood begin? In this video, we are going to talk about excuses that adolescents make and how those relate to readiness for adulthood. We're also going to talk about brain development and what we need to know there so that we know when they're really ready. We're going to talk about the age factor because people always talk about age, and is that how you really know when somebody is an adult or not? And we're going to talk about how a person can control themselves and what abilities they have for self-control during adolescence. And you know what? If you stay with me that far, we're going to talk about some more things after that too. As adolescents grow and develop, they take on more responsibility, but it is kind of a normal thing that adolescents don't want to take on as much responsibility. They kind of start feeling like as they get older that they'd like to kick back and just have a little bit more recreation, a little bit more playtime, and maybe do a few less chores. Have you noticed that? Well, this is a definite stumbling block that a lot of adolescents have. In fact, usually we start seeing an increase of excuses happening during this time why they can't do something or why they can't come to something, or whatever it happens to be. They start wanting to take a little bit more control of their own lives as they're launching into adulthood, but they're not there yet. And one of the ways that we know that they're not there yet is because they're still making excuses. A full adult does not make excuses. They take full responsibility. That is a sign of full maturity. Now, if you're thinking of an adult, maybe somebody who's like 40, 50, even 60, who all they ever do is make excuses, I suppose we could make the case that maybe they're not out of adolescence yet. Another part of adolescence is the chemical development. I mean, there's hormone development, things that make the body grow muscularly and chemically as well as biologically to prepare to be able to actually have children, right? And, be part of that very mature, very adult process. But mostly the thing that I consider to be the sign that adolescence is done is if a person takes full responsibility for themselves. There is a whole generation, or maybe 2, of adults that struggle with this. And this isn't everyone, of course, but there are many who, in England, they have a name for these people. They call them teenolts, which means they're technically adult age, and their chemicals biologically, their hormones biologically, are at adult levels, yet they want to behave like teenagers and not have full responsibility for themselves. This is what they call teenolts, which I thought was an interesting term when it was shared with me when I happened to be at the United Nations a number of years ago, talking about maturing and family relationships. Anyway, so that means that adolescent mindset could go on forever. So how do you help a person transition then from adolescent mindset to adult mindset? Well, the answer is self-government. You've got to train them to govern themselves and control themselves. If you do, then they will naturally find themselves in a place where they feel like it's safe, acceptable, comfortable, and empowering to take personal responsibility for themselves. Many people know that the brain does not fully develop until a person is between the ages of 18 and 26 years old. And I think that's why some insurance companies are allowing adults to stay on their parents' insurance until they're like 26 years old, just because they consider them adolescents. In fact, in Europe, especially, this is becoming a more common thing where they actually call people who are 18 or 20, they call them kids still. And they're really not. They shouldn't be, I guess. Maybe some people behave in that way. But It really isn't the brain development that even signifies that a person is ready for adulthood, as much as it is the will or the heart of the person. What is the will capable of doing? Can the will train the person, or is the person always falling victim to their next craving, their next bodily desire? If they're always falling for the next craving and next bodily desire, they're not at full maturity of will. And if their will is fully strong, then they're ready to be an adult. So that's what I work for with my children. I teach them self-government. I teach them to control themselves. What is self-government? Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behavior so that you can control them. My children learn skills from me, 4 basic skills that they learn from the time they can talk. Those skills are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When they learn those 4 skills from me, they become confident young people. But over time, as we transition them into adulthood, they start using those skills just with themselves, meaning not only can they accept an instruction and follow an instruction from me, but they are giving themselves instructions. They are giving themselves no answers. They are accepting the consequences that come their way and not complaining about it, but just going, yep, that's cause and effect. I shouldn't have been speeding down the road, or whatever it happens to be, that consequence came into their life. They accept it, and part of accepting those consequences at the very end, the last step of that skill set, is to drop the subject. So they say, that's what happened, I'm going to drop the subject and I'm going to move on. I'm going to change my way. This is what a self-governed person does. A person who has their will in charge of their thoughts and their behaviors. This is a powerful type of person. And I try to help my young people get to be to that place before they leave my home. So if a person is fully mature and they're ready for adulthood, they make their own plans and then they correct themselves along the way. They actually desire to do this, and they have the ability to. If you have a young person that's living in your home, maybe they're in their 20s, but they don't have the desire or the ability to move themselves into adulthood, to take responsibility for themselves, to not make excuses anymore, to follow instructions, accept no answers, get a job, stuff like that, then technically they aren't adults. You can declare them adults, but they're not behaving like adults. So then if they try to demand adult perks from you, in an entitled way, it makes sense that you would say, this is what an adult does though, right? An adult is this. Our young people need to be empowered. I think many of them have just followed the examples of other people around them and thought, well, what's the easiest way? Well, what's the most fun? Well, what are my pleasures? A true adult doesn't spend their life pursuing pleasures. A true adult spends their life pursuing purpose. Purpose is so much different, and it often requires sacrifice and very hard work. So one thing that we can do for our young people is we can teach them how to work hard, how to sacrifice for something bigger and better than themselves, and how to pursue a life of purpose. If you have liked all of this talk about adolescence and adulthood, I know you're going to love the next video right here called How to Instill Responsibility in Your Child. Go ahead and click on that. I think it'll add more to the conversation for you.